And welcome back, rugby fans, to Rugby 411. As always, I'm your host. My name is Joshua Shibata, and this is our power rankings for week 12 of the MLR 2024 season. Man, what a very interesting week this last week was. I really don't know what word to describe it. There were some very exciting but also very interesting games. One of them had a very odd ending, which, if you saw it and you turned off the game right after the last point was scored, you might have thought the other team won than the one that actually revealed to have won the game. If that doesn't really make sense to you, or if you really didn't pay attention to it and you just saw what the results were overall, you may not even notice that something like this happened. Um, I'm not going to criticize the league on this turn of events, but it does kind of suck for the teams that were involved because I feel if the teams knew better of what the actual score was, things would have been a little bit different. But I digress. I will go in a little bit more into detail when we get to that game. But yeah, a really odd week. Last week, all the games except for one were decided by less than 3 points. This time, every game was decided by one score. No game was determined by more than 7 points. It really does show a lot of the parity in Major League Rugby, where literally any team can win on any given rugby day, because we play pretty much almost every day of the weekend if you extend it to Friday. And there were a couple of upsets this weekend as well. So the SuperBru results were pretty interesting as well. But before we get further into my rankings, if you've never seen my videos before, the way that it works is not based on your win-loss record of the teams or who is where on the standings of the conferences on the table. It really determines by who you play on the pitch in the now. It's really about what you've been doing lately, not if you racked up a bunch of game wins at the very beginning of the season and started kind of tumble, but you're still on top of the league just because you've been the best team so far. It really is about what you've done lately, who you beat. Are you beating teams that are above you, or are you beating teams that are below you? If you're beating teams that are below you, like the last place team, I'm not going to move you very high, and that did come into play in this week, which was a very hard week in determining my power rankings, which I'll get into a little bit in just a second. Or are you beating teams that are above you that will allow you to come up? If you're losing to teams that are below you, you will slide down. In the end, I feel my power rankings do reflect pretty well on who is kind of on top of the league and who's on the bottom. And it works out pretty well in the end. Now, this week was difficult. We had a couple teams on bye, and you know my philosophy on teams on bye. I don't like to have those teams move up or down. I don't believe a team should be punished for not playing a week, and I definitely don't think a team should be rewarded for not playing a week. But it does provide a little bit of difficulty in moving teams up when I don't feel, especially in, like I said, a certain game, I didn't feel a team deserved to move up because of the way that they won. But there were a few games where they were so close. I didn't feel like those teams that loss should be moving down as well. So I'm going to do things a little bit different this time around. I'm going to be placing teams two at a time rather than going by 12 up to 1. And then I'll pretty much be left with the two teams that were the only two teams, spoiler alert here, the only two teams that ended up flipping. And it may be a little controversial on the team that dropped because they dropped quite a bit. But it was, in my opinion, the only game where I felt was truly an upset game. But before we do that, let's start off, first of all, like I mentioned before, two of the teams were on bye. So let's just get that out of the way and put those two teams on the board so you can see where they were and where I kind of got stuck on moving teams. Old Glory DC, who went into the week at number 7, stayed in the week at number 7. And then Miami Sharks are at number 8. Both of those teams were on bye. So as I mentioned before, I really don't like moving teams when they're on a bye. I don't feel, again, that they should fall. I definitely don't feel that they should go up because they didn't do anything. But like I said, it does make the teams around them, especially these two teams that are kind of in the middle, little hard to maneuver. But let's get straight into it. So, first of all, good Lord. As a Rugby Football Club LA fan, this game was a multiple heart attacks in a game. It was RFCLA taking on their fellow new kids on the block, Anthem Rugby Carolina. Now, before we even go into this game, I think I mentioned a couple videos ago that it was mentioned about this league. This year, this season, has been the most penalized season of all Major League Rugby. The teams overall, there has been the most yellow and red cards given in any season so far. And we're only in week 12. We still have 6 more weeks to go. We are at the 2/3 way of the mark. And it's already the most penalized, the most carded season so far. And just to prove a point, I'm going to keep track right here with a yellow card tracker on how many yellow cards were given out that at least I'm mentioning. Now, I might have missed a couple, but at least that I'm mentioning how many yellow cards, and the number is going to kind of shock quite a few people. But let's get into it. So, RFCLA taking on Anthem Rugby Carolina. In the first 10 minutes, now this should have been, as a RCLA fan, this should have been a walk in the park, theoretically. Carolina is the only team that has not won a game. They are the experimental team built on a lot of younger players, purposely young American-eligible players, giving them a chance to start on a professional level, but at the same time, playing against teams that are definitely more well-equipped than they are. But it is a learning experience for them. But with that being said, in the first 10 minutes, Carolina scores a try and Los Angeles gets a yellow card. And LA is still, to this point, the most penalized team, most carded team out of any team in Major League Rugby. And they get themselves a yellow card in the game. Now, in the game, LA was not playing very well at all. Not only with the ill discipline, but they also unfortunately suffered a lot of injuries. One of their top tacklers, Matt Heaton, unfortunately went off with an HIA, head injury assessment, because he bashed into a fellow player. And then Connor Young, a very talented prop, unfortunately got a very bad gash. I think he got kicked in the face, unfortunately, and he developed a really bad gash. They couldn't stop the bleeding, so he was out for the rest of the game. And that was, again, within the first 10 minutes of the game. So already LA was in some dire situation. But fortunately for them, several errors on Carolina's part allowed LA to stay in the game. They scored a couple tries themselves. And then to get back within 4 points, LA's very talented hooker Ben Strand was able to score a try to take the lead at the half, 22-19. It looked at that point that LA was going to take away the win, but then the very talented fullback very talented fly half Cliven Lobster, a Namibian international on Anthem Carolina, was able to get a beautiful interception try to take the lead to 29-28 going into the last 10 minutes of the game. Honestly, as an LA fan, it looked pretty dire. But fortunately, again, Carolina unfortunately shot themselves in the foot. They had an intentional knockdown turn into a yellow card of their own. That allowed LA to have the man advantage. And in the very last couple of minutes, very talented Fijian Olympic gold medalist Semi Kunatani was able to score the game-winning try, taking the win 33-29. So, with that being said, Carolina, the bottom place team, hasn't won a game this season. I'm not predicting them to win a game this season, unfortunately. And they were a couple minutes shy of winning and pulling off a big upset win over LA. LA barely struck by a team that they should have pretty much kind of manhandled. No offense to Carolina. So this game, I felt, was the one where LA, who started at number 9, despite the win, stayed at number 9. Because again, I don't feel like Miami and Old Glory should be moving anywhere because of the bye. So that sets up quite a bit of a logjam in front of LA. I did feel it was justifiable of a win for LA to move up to number 6. I even thought about maybe sliding Miami No Glory down 1 at least, maybe. But again, with way other things played out, it just didn't work out, and Miami No Glory would have slid too far down. LA would have went too high up, and it just felt better for me, just for everyone to just stay put in this game. So that's where I have these two teams sitting. Next game, Utah Warriors taking on the NOLA Gold. Kind of a very defensive game in this one. NOLA coming out like a bat on fire at the very beginning, scoring 14 points in the first half, including an amazing try by big man prop Jared Adams. Joel Hodgson's, he is one of the top point scorers in the league currently right now for the Utah Warriors, but unfortunately he is also one of the most inaccurate kickers this league. I think he has the highest inaccuracy with the most missed kicks. He has 2 penalty kicks that he completely missed. Could have put Utah on the board. In the end, when the half ends, it's NOLA up 14-0. Now, unfortunately, to add salt to the wounds, Joe Mono, the very talented Utah Warrior winger, unfortunately got hurt, left the game, did not come back. Don't know what his status is, but that's a huge loss for Utah, already struggling. In the second half, Utah finally scores their a try, and that was technically seconds after NOLA scored their third try. And that was pretty much the game until the very last couple of minutes when Utah scored a last-minute try to make the score 21-14. Again, not the most exciting game, but in the end, NOLA walks away with the win, 21-14. I had Utah staying at number 11 with that win. And again, NOLA, doing what they did. They are the second-ranked team. Not exactly the most impressive win over Utah, but, nowhere really to go upwards considering who's sitting at number 1. So NOLA just stays at number 2. But NOLA continuing to build up quite a nice little win streak for themselves, surprising me pretty much in this game. By the way, that's the only game that did not have any cards in it. So don't worry, the counter will come back next in this one. Now, the one game that I felt was quite the upset, Dallas Shackles taking on the Seattle Seawolves. In this game, Dallas from the start just comes out and scores 2 tries within the first 25 minutes. And again, adding salt to the wound, Rickard Hatting, the very talented Seattle player, one of the top try scorers in the league, unfortunately was hurt, had to lead the game. And then after that, though, Dallas did get a yellow card. But Seattle, who unfortunately was struggling a lot with their set pieces, like their lineouts and their maul, just was not able to capitalize on having that advantage. They almost scored near the end, but unfortunately they knocked the ball on. At the end of the half, Seattle then gets a yellow card, and then Dallas gets 2 yellow cards of their own. That allows Seattle to finally score in the last couple of minutes of the second half, but it was a little too late, and in the end, Dallas wins that game 14-7. In the end, it was a pretty dominant performance, except for just the sloppiness of the game by both sides for Dallas. So I allowed Dallas to get that win, and if it wasn't for the 2 yellow cards, I think Dallas might have been able to pull off a higher win for this one. So this is the one where I feel a lot of people might be a little skeptical about it, because basically what I had in this one, Seattle went into this game number 4. Dallas was in this game at number 10. And just the way that things worked out with the rest of the games, I ended up having them switch places. Yes, your two-time MLR champions, the Seattle Seawolves, dropping all the way down to number 10. I think that's the lowest they've ever been in my power rankings. while the Dallas Jackals, I think they might have cracked the top 4 once, all the way up to number 4. Big win for them. They really have been having a very good season this season. Maybe not the most consistent, but they've definitely been winning some very tough games and proving that they could be the spoilers in the Western Conference. Far cry from where they started a couple of years ago as a team that debuted, just like the Carolinas is looking right now, with no wins in their very first season. Taking down the Seattle Seawolves is a huge scalp for them. Again, with the way things worked, especially again 7 and 8, I didn't want LA to move any because I felt the Dallas win is so much bigger of a win than LA's win over Carolina. Seattle losing to Dallas, I felt was a huge loss for them, so they needed to slide down. But again, I didn't want them to slide down to affect Old Glory and Miami to go up. So I basically had Seattle slide all the way down to number 10 and Dallas moving up all the way to number 4. Now, moving on. In the next game, really good game. I felt this was a good contender for Game of the Week. Your Houston SaberCats taking on the Chicago Hounds. Really competitive game. In the first 20 minutes, Chicago was very aggressive, trying very hard to score as quickly as possible. But Houston's defense really kept them out of the try zone. Finally, when Houston finally got possession of the ball, they were able to finally score the first opening try. But then Chicago, with Nate, the great Osberger, was able to score a try in his own. And then that was followed by a beautiful try scored by Julian Dominguez. Both of those guys, super talented players for Chicago. Very offensive weapons for any team. Julian Dominguez was able to make up on a error that David Coutier from Houston, who was playing fullback, was trying to get a kicked ball. Unfortunately, he misplayed it. Julian Dominguez was right on it, able to score a beautiful try. And then a pair of penalty kicks from AGL. Chimu, though, allowed Houston to stay ahead at the half, 13-12. So a very competitive game in the first half. Then in the second half, Chicago scores the second try by Nate Osberger, and then a second try by Julian Dominguez. So both of those two offensive players for Chicago had a great game. Unfortunately, then Dominguez got himself a yellow card for a high tackle. And minutes later, Houston then got their own yellow card. But Houston was able to score the last try, and they were able to pull ahead just barely, 23-22, to take down Chicago. Very exciting game. Unfortunately for Chicago, I feel Adrian Carlisi, who is usually a pretty reliable kicker for Chicago, he was 1 for 4 on his conversion kicks. 6 points right there. They lost by 1. Could have made a difference. I mean, they weren't easy kicks either, but when your kicker is 1 for 4, it makes it very hard to win close games like this. So in the end, Houston was able to maintain their top rank and only 1 loss so far this season. They are looking like a very good team. But again, as I mentioned before, Chicago looked really good in this game as well. It could have went either way. And so because of that, I didn't feel like Chicago should have moved from their number 6 spot. Again, if they moved, I don't want to move number 7 or number 8, Miami or Glory. I didn't feel like LA's win over Carolina was better than Chicago's loss. Again, that game could have gone either way. Chicago could have won that game. LA could have easily lost that game. So again, just felt like everybody should just stay put. I mean, that basically is how it worked in the end. And then finally, the last game of the week, San Diego versus New England, the rematch of last year's finals. This time, though, taking place in Snapdragon Stadium. Now, this game is where there's some controversy in it, or at least a very interesting ending if you didn't see it. San Diego, right off the start, they get a red card. Okay, so they got a red card right off the bat. But fortunately for San Diego, their defense was really solid. They only allowed New England to get a penalty kick in those first 20 minutes. And San Diego was able to, even with a player down, were able to capitalize with 13 points scored on their own. New England looked really shell-shocked in this game. I don't know if it's because they didn't have Jason Patros on their team. They were traveling to San Diego. They looked very, very woozy in that first half. So the first half ends 13-3 San Diego. Then, I don't know what Scott Matthew, head coach of New England, told New England in the locker room, but it completely switched. It was all New England in the second half. They scored 3 times in the second half, and they were up 13-24. Now, with 2 minutes left, New England up again, 13-24. New England kind of fell asleep and allowed Lincoln McClutchy to score a try with a couple of minutes left in the half. Lincoln McClutchy, who is the fly half for the team, for San Diego, didn't even really try and attempt at the conversion kick because he wanted to get the kickoff at the very end to give San Diego a chance because they had to score again in order for a chance for them to score without losing precious time taking that conversion kick. He did not make the conversion kick. He didn't even really try at it. Now, that's the important part, okay? So, 13-24 was the score. Lincoln McClutchy scores. He did not make the conversion kick. Then, New England gets, I kid you not, they get two yellow cards within the last couple of minutes going into overtime. They're going into overtime, 2 yellow cards for New England. That, of course, allows San Diego to score off of Thomas Aoki, who has been kind of quiet this whole season. He scores a try. Now, the scoreboard, unknowing to anybody, gave San Diego, with that try, the winning score 25-24. And without even the conversion kick, which Lincoln McClutchy did miss, San Diego was deemed the winner of the game. But, hold on a sec. What no one realized was that Lincoln McClutchy try, where he did not make that conversion kick, he missed it. Someone on the scoreboard put those 2 points on. So even though it looked like San Diego won 25-24, and Lincoln McClutchy did not make the second conversion kick that Thomas Aoki, who scored the supposed winning try, he didn't make that conversion kick. So if you took the 2 points off that he wasn't supposed to have, unfortunately the score ends up 24-23 for New England. And, I mean, yeah, God, that's got to be kind of heartbreaking for San Diego. And I don't know if that would have changed anything. Because, again, I don't know what the scoreboards are showing in the stadium comparatively to what's showing on the TV screen. But you can see on the TV screen when you're watching the game where they gave the 2 extra points for Lincoln McClutchy's supposed conversion kick after his try. They didn't give it to him immediately. But after a couple of minutes going into play, after those 2 points magically appeared, and I believe that threw everybody off because they believed that was the score. All San Diego had to do was just score a try, not necessarily score the conversion as well. And again, nothing changed after Thomas Abreu scored. I don't know if Lincoln McClutchy knew he had to make the kick. It wasn't the greatest angle either, but I don't feel Lincoln McClutchy knew that he had to make that conversion. Maybe he would have tried a little harder. Maybe the kick would have been different. But the fact that everybody thought, even New England thought, because they were all shaking hands, and you can see New England looked kind of upset that they lost. And then after commercial break, it came back. The score was changed because they realized the error. And in the end, they were talking to, I forgot who the New England player who was awarded Player of the Week, Player of the Match. But yeah, you know, it's everyone I think was caught surprised by that one. Again, it kind of sucks because this error could have been avoided. Not putting blame to anybody. As a person that works behind the scenes with Rugby Football Club LA, I do know that there is a person in the stadium that does control the scoreboard and does keep in contact with the TV crew. I believe the person that controls the scoreboard in the stadium, if they do it like we do in LA, is the one that relays the information to the people in the TV screen and the TV crew. So the TV crew is just going off of what's being told from the stadium crew. and someone in the stadium must have thought there was a 2-point conversion that was made, and that's what threw everybody off. Fortunately, though, the error was caught. It was unfortunate that it was caught after the fact, because again, it might have changed things a little bit. Lincoln McClutchy, maybe, if he didn't rush it, I think if I remember correctly, that try and that conversion kick was a makeable kick. But again, he was trying to rush to make sure he scored again. I don't know. Again, could have made a difference, maybe not, but it's definitely unfortunate ending to a very important game. Because again, it's kind of interesting that this game, rematch of last year's championship game, that game was also won by New England by 1 point as well. So kind of interesting how things turned out. So again, with that being said, I didn't feel New England going in at the number 3 spot and San Diego going in at the number 5 spot. It could have been anyone's game in this one. San Diego was the tough team at the first half. They fell asleep and New England came back in the second half. But I mean, both teams were very well within winning this game. And maybe the points would have made a difference if they knew what the correct score was. Like I said, maybe Lincoln McClutchy could have tried a little harder on that last kick in order to make sure that was the winning. If he knew that that kick was going to determine the win, rather than thinking that the win was already in the bag. I don't know. But yeah, like I said, I don't know how to describe this week. It was a very interesting week of rugby. Like I said, all the games determined by no more than 7 points. Very, very close games. An upset in this one as well. And now let's look at the grand total of all the cards that we had. 1 red card and 10 yellow cards. 5 games played over the weekend. 11 cards total. 1 game did not have a card at all. So it really does say something. I mean, I don't want to go on to an editorial about this part, but it is interesting. I don't know if it's the league cracking down a lot harder. I don't know if it's the players getting a little sloppier and thinking that maybe they can get away with a little bit more aggressive play because it is a fledgling rugby league in a country that's not super familiar with rugby. But it is a lot of cards. There are a lot of cards this season. 11 cards in 5 games, that's a lot. And that really is a lot. And one of them was a red card. So take that with what you will. But yes, this is the power rankings this week. Only 2 teams moved. And yes, I know it is a controversial one, having your two-time MLR champions slide all the way to number 10. You know, they do have the opportunity to move up. I don't feel like they're going to stay down here for very long. And Dallas now has a chance to stay up in a pretty high position. And again, it's not like this is any different than, too much different than the current standings. Dallas is in a good position to possibly make a playoff spot. Houston is the best team in the league by far, the only team with 1 loss. New England is struggling a little bit. NOLA is a surprise team right now. I think I had it a little bit reversed where I felt the Western Conference was going to be more of the struggle. Right now, the Eastern Conference, New England is not the top king. NOLA is right behind them. So is Chicago. So it's a tight race in that Eastern Conference, much tighter than what the Western Conference is looking at. Houston is kind of slipping away from everybody. But as I mentioned before, we still have 6 more weeks in the season. A lot can change in those 6 weeks. Now, let's go over our SuperBru. Bam! And here we go. Congratulations to Manxman. Not familiar with the name, but he is our winner. Out of 14.5 points, 6.5 is the top score. But it was very close because our runner-up, USA League and Union Rugby fan, is number 6, tied with KDC. So congratulations, Coop. 2 really, really great weeks. You've been turning it around. So have I. So I think we both have been doing pretty well, or at least we've been picking a lot of the upsets so far, and it's kind of been hitting. And then tied for 4th is Lady Juliet, 5.5. 5.5. I'm sorry. 4th place is Lady Juliet for 5.5. Tied for 5th, our former number 1, Sarai, 5.25, and Red, 5.25. Unfortunately, Leon again with the wooden spoon this week. Overall leaderboard, bam. we have at number 1 JZ at 66.33, but right behind them, James A 6117, 65.66. So a little bit over half a point difference. Like I said, it's very, very competitive this year in our Pick'em League. Number 3, BT Woodrow, right behind James with 65.08. Going up a spot is Villa Farrell, number 4, 61.75. And then coming up 2 spots because of such a great performance this last week, our former number 1, Sarai, 61.58. Our bottom 5 looks like that. I am finally out of the bottom 5. Thank God. That's all I was really looking for. And right now, I'm looking at you, Lady Juliet. You better watch out. I'm coming for you. But she's having just as good a good season so far now as I am. But number 27 is Sunshine number 1, 48.5. Number 28 is Hugo, 46.5. 29, unfortunately, is our two-time wooden spoon right now, 41.5. Leon. 30 is Wild Thing at 37.25. And then 31, Sunshine 2 at 29. So again, don't forget, guys, we do have a little bit of an interesting weekend coming up. Only 4 games for this coming weekend, week number 13, which obviously in the next few videos I will preview. 1 game is going to be on Friday, 1's on Saturday, and 2 on Sunday. So you do got to make sure you get your points in because, like I mentioned before, every point counts in this one. And again, very interesting power rankings this time around. Let me know what you think, especially with this number 10 Seattle Seawolves. I know for a fact there's going to be a lot of fans that are not happy about this situation. But, you know, at the same time, they did lose to the Dallas Jackals, which I don't think anyone saw coming. It is a big loss, and they do have the opportunity to work their way back up. It's not hard for your two-time defending MLR champions to do that as well. So, thank you very much as always for watching my video. I do appreciate the support, and I'll see you on the pitch.